That Christmas Eve, I put my fork down. I finally realized my mother's empty chair was not left as a memorial. It was left to diminish me. Before dinner, my stepmother slapped me on the porch, striking at a past I had tried to bury, but this time, someone was watching. As the snow settled, a video surfaced, pulling my family from the table to face a truth they could not finish chewing. My name is Maria Dominguez. The air in my Honda was stale, trapped. It smelled of the industrial disinfectant I carried on my skin, in my hair, under my nails. It was the scent of Lakeview Mercy Center, a sterile ghost that followed me home every morning, or in this case, every evening. I was a night nurse, but the holidays had twisted the schedules into a pretzel, and I'd just finished a 16-hour shift that felt like a lifetime. Outside, the snow was coming down hard, thick Ohio flakes that muffled the world, burying the parking lot of the hospital in a heavy, suffocating white. I sat, engine idling, the wipers groaning as they pushed slush from the glass, just trying to find the energy to put the car in drive. My hands, chapped and red, ached on the cold steering wheel. Then the phone buzzed. It was a sharp, angry vibration against the dashboard. I didn't need to look. It was the family group chat, a prelude to the holiday demands. I picked it up. The screen glowed, too bright in the twilight. A message from Marla Sutton, my stepmother. Kara's in-laws are coming for dinner tomorrow. We just won't have the room for you and Piper this year. I read it once, twice. The words were flat, informational, as if canceling a dental appointment. Not, can we try for dessert? Not, we're so sorry. Let's celebrate on the 26th. Just, no room. You and your daughter are excluded. The this year was a particular cruelty, a casual dismissal that left no room for argument. Kara was my half-sister, Marla's biological daughter, and her new husband's family trumped the original blood. Before I could even process the sting, a new message pinged, right below it, this one from my father. Dean. Maria, remember to pick up that new smartwatch for me, the black one with the graphite band. I stared at the two messages, stacked one on top of the other. The cognitive dissonance was a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. He hadn't defended me. He hadn't intervened. He had likely watched Marla type her message of exclusion and then, without missing a beat, added his own demand, a gift, an expensive one. My paycheck was already stretched thin, paying for my small rental apartment and Piper's specialized therapies, a fact they knew well. The request was so nakedly entitled, so completely blind to the message that had preceded it, that I felt a cold, sharp laugh rising in my throat. It died before it made a sound. My gaze drifted to the dashboard clock. The green digital numbers glared back. 8:17 p.m., Christmas Eve, at the main house, the house I grew up in. They would be sitting down for the first dinner, the one Marla always hosted for the inner circle before the big day. Tomorrow, the house would be filled with the scent of turkey and pine. Laughter would be echoing off the vaulted ceilings, and Kara's new, important family would be welcomed. And I, Maria, would be in my 2-bedroom apartment, eating leftover pasta, trying to explain to my daughter why we weren't allowed at Grandma's house. The image was so clear it hurt. Me, trying to force cheer, while Piper sat with her own plate, probably lining up her green beans in perfect parallel lines, safe in the logic of her own world, unaware of the social rejection happening just 3 miles away. I closed my eyes, and the memories came flooding back. The price of my return. I had come back to Cedar Heights 4 years ago, my tail between my legs. The divorce had been brutal, leaving me with a mountain of legal debt and a bruised spirit. I came back home for help, for the family safety net everyone talks about. My father had been awkward but welcoming. Marla had been a vision of sympathetic concern. Of course, Maria, darling, you and Piper stay as long as you need. We're family. The favor lasted about a week, then the requests began. Maria, since you're home anyway, could you just watch the house while I get my nails done? Maria, Dean's clients are coming over. Would you be a doll and whip up some appetizers? It morphed. so gradually I barely noticed. From small favors to ironclad expectations. My nursing shifts were scheduled around Marla's social calendar. My days off were spent deep cleaning their oversized house, running errands, becoming the unpaid, on-call concierge and chef for their entire lives. The safety net, I realized, wasn't a net at all. It was a cage of obligation, and I had walked right into it, dragging my daughter with me. The worst part was what it did to Piper. My daughter is 8 years old, brilliant, and on the autism spectrum. Her world is one of deep, intense passions. Her current passion was trains, not just trains, but the specific engineering of mid-century steam locomotives. I remembered last Thanksgiving. The house was full. Piper, in a rare moment of social bravery, had cornered my father's business partner and was vibrating with joy as she explained the difference between a simple and a compound steam engine. Her voice was clear, her facts impeccable. Marla had glided over, a fixed smile on her face. She placed a heavy hand on Piper's shoulder, a gesture that looked like affection, but was a physical interruption. "Piper, honey, that's enough," she'd said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Mr. Henderson doesn't want to hear about all that. You're being rude." I watched the light in Piper's eyes go out. It was a physical thing, like a switch being flipped. She stopped, mid-sentence. Her shoulders slumped. She looked down at her shoes and didn't speak again for the rest of the night. Mr. Henderson had actually looked disappointed, but Marla had already steered the conversation back to herself, to the success of her latest charity luncheon. I had wanted to scream. I had wanted to grab Piper's hand and walk out, but I didn't. I had stayed, swallowed the rage, and served the pumpkin pie. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't family. I was staff. For years, I had been the head cook, the scullery maid, and the cleanup crew for every holiday, every dinner party, every Sunday brunch. I would arrive with bags of groceries I had paid for, cook for 12 hours, serve the meal, and then spend another 2 hours scrubbing pots while Marla, in a silk blouse, accepted compliments on her wonderful dinner. "Oh, it was nothing," she'd laugh, waving a manicured hand. "Just a little something I threw together," and I, smelling of garlic and dish soap, would just stand in the kitchen doorway, invisible. My gaze fell on the passenger seat, on the empty space beside me, and I thought of the other empty space, the chair. Every Christmas, for as long as I could remember after my mother died, Marla had made a great ceremony of the empty chair, a single, perfect place setting at the head of the table, opposite my father. "For your mother, Maria," she would say, her voice hushed with reverence. "So she's always with us." As a child, I found it comforting. As a young woman, I found it morbid. Now, sitting in the cold car, smelling the disinfectant, with the text messages burning on my phone, I saw it for what it truly was. It wasn't a memorial. It was a prop. It was a tool of control. The empty chair wasn't there to honor my mother. It was there to remind me that my claim to that table was through a ghost. It was a symbol of my exclusion, a physical representation that my side of the family was dead, and I was just a leftover, a burden they had to accommodate. The chair was a constant, silent threat. "Be grateful. You're lucky to even be in this house. You could be as gone as she is." And this year, they had finally made it literal. There was no room for me. The leftover was being discarded. Something inside me, a long dormant wire stretched taut for a decade, finally snapped. It didn't break with a loud noise. It broke with a sudden, deafening silence. I reached out and pressed the power button on the side of the phone. The screen went black. I didn't text Marla back, pleading. I didn't text my father back, agreeing to his demand. I didn't reply at all. I dropped the dark, silent phone into my bag. The absence of its buzzing felt like a victory. I took a deep breath. The air still smelled like the hospital, but it felt different. It felt like my air. I put the car in drive. The tires bit into the snow, and I pulled out of the parking spot. I drove away from Lakeview Mercy Center, not toward my father's house, but toward my own small apartment, toward Piper, for the first time in 4 years. My mind wasn't a chaotic storm of lists, groceries to buy, floors to mop, egos to soothe, apologies to make for my daughter's existence. For the first time, my mind was completely wonderfully quiet. When I got home and parked, I sat in the silence for another minute. Then, just to be sure, I turned the phone back on. I didn't look at the new messages that were inevitably piling up. Instead, I opened the family group chat and scrolled up. Past Marla's text, past my father's. I scrolled up a week. There it was, a message from Marla, sent to the whole group. Just a reminder. Maria is handling the food for Christmas Day as usual. Make sure to send her your requests. And below it, from my aunt. Maria, can you make sure to do the 12 side dishes again? The kids loved them last year. 12 dishes. I was expected to shop for, pay for, and cook 12 separate side dishes. For a party I was now explicitly uninvited from. The quiet in my mind solidified. It turned from silence into ice. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had intended to use me, to extract every last bit of my labor, and then cast me and my daughter aside. I looked at the text about the 12 dishes. I looked at the dark, snow-covered street. Every year, my mother's chair sat empty, and every year, I was in the kitchen, too busy serving to ever sit down. I hadn't even had a chair to begin with. I got out of the car. The cold air hit my face, and it felt like a baptism. I walked up the steps to my apartment, the sound of my boots the only noise on the street, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was walking away from a home. I felt like I was walking toward one. Piper was asleep in her room. The door cracked just enough for me to see the glow of her train-shaped nightlight. The apartment was quiet. This was not the stunned, icy silence from the car. This was the familiar quiet of my own space, a quiet I suddenly realized I had never truly valued. It was a blank canvas. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't make tea. I walked to the hall closet and pulled out the shoebox I labeled taxes. It was a lie. It was my Marla box. It held every questionable receipt, every passive-aggressive holiday card, every bank statement I'd ever printed out in a fit of frustration and then shoved away, too tired or too scared to confront. I dumped the contents onto my small, laminate dining table. It was a blizzard of paper. I began my investigation. The work was methodical, the kind of triage I practiced in the emergency room. I sorted the chaos into piles. Pile 1, receipts, groceries for dinner parties I wasn't invited to, gifts for relatives I'd never met, the $500 deposit for Kara's wedding venue, which Marla had sworn she'd pay back next week. That was 2 years ago. Pile 2, bank transfers, labeled Dad, car trouble. Kara, books. Marla, utilities. A steady, one-way bleed of my income into their household. Pile 3, evidence of credit. I logged into my laptop and pulled up the local Cedar Heights social media pages. There was Marla at the Lakeview Mercy fundraiser, an event I had catered for free, spending 3 nights baking 400 miniature tarts, accepting an award for her tireless community spirit. There was a photo of her handing over a check to the children's wing, a check made possible because I had paid her electric bill that month. I opened a spreadsheet. My hands were steady. This was not emotion. This was data entry. I worked for hours. The only sound the clicking of the keyboard and the whisper of snow against the window. I entered every receipt, every transfer, every emergency loan that was never a loan. I hit the sum button. The number that appeared at the bottom of the screen felt unreal. $11,480. I stared at it. I checked the math. It was correct. In 4 years, I had subsidized my father and stepmother's comfortable life to the tune of nearly $12,000. I pulled up my own banking app, my emergency fund. The one I painstakingly fed with $50 a paycheck contained $2,150. I had given them 5 times what I had managed to save for my own daughter. The safety net hadn't just been a cage. It had been a systematic theft. They weren't just using my labor, they were draining my future. A wave of nausea hit me, so potent I had to grip the table. It wasn't just anger, it was a profound, hollow sense of shame. I had let this happen. My eyes fell on a different pile, the box of old photographs I'd salvaged from my mother's things. I pulled one from the top, my 12th birthday. It was 3 months after Marla had moved in. I was standing in the old kitchen, holding a lopsided chocolate cake. I was wearing a paper crown. I was alone. I remembered that day with a clarity that stung. I had asked Marla if we could make my mother's recipe for angel food cake. Marla had smiled, that tight, thin-lipped smile, and said, "Oh, honey, that's far too complicated." An hour later, she'd developed one of her blinding migraines and retired to her room with a wet cloth over her eyes. My father, helpless, had handed me $20 to buy a box mix. I had baked it myself. I had frosted it myself. I had sung happy birthday to myself. I looked at the girl in the photograph. She wasn't crying. She was just watching. Her eyes were old. It was the face of a child who had just learned, in real time, that her needs were an inconvenience, a child who understood, far too soon, that she would have to be the adult. "No more," I whispered to the girl in the picture. I turned back to the laptop. I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it, The Manipulation Genealogy. I began to upload the evidence. I scanned the receipts. I screenshotted the bank transfers. I took screenshots of the family group chat, scrolling back months, years. "Maria, you have to be here. Your father is so stressed. Maria, Kara is devastated. You're the only one who can help her study. Maria, I'm counting on you for the fundraiser. Don't let me down." I created subfolders: financial abuse, guilt tripping, labor exploitation, parental alienation, Piper. It was cold. It was clinical. It was the most empowering thing I had ever done. When the last file was uploaded, I opened a blank text document. It was a journal entry, but it felt more like a verdict. They don't want to remember my mother. If they truly remembered her, they would be ashamed. They want to use the memory of her to erase me. The empty chair isn't a symbol of her presence. It's a symbol of my absence. It's the space I'm supposed to shrink myself to fit into. A ghost, a servant, unseen, unheard, and infinitely available. They don't want a daughter. They want a martyr. I closed the file and opened another. This one I titled Boundaries. It was a simple list, but writing it felt like signing a treaty with myself. 1. I will no longer provide free labor. This includes, but is not limited to, cooking, cleaning, event planning, and errand running. 2. I will not finance their lifestyle. No more loans. No more forgotten bills. The Bank of Maria is closed. 3. Last-minute requests on their part do not constitute an emergency on my part. 4. My daughter, Piper, will be treated with respect. Her passions will be acknowledged, not dismissed. Her boundaries will be honored. Any attempt to shush her, shame her, or make her feel less than will result in our immediate departure from any situation. 5. I will not engage in arguments. I will state my position and end the conversation. Reading the list, I knew what would come next. Marla's playbook was predictable. When her primary tool, guilt, failed, she would escalate. She would paint me as ungrateful, as unstable, as a danger to my own child. I had to move faster. I opened my work email. I composed a careful, confidential message to my nursing administrator, a woman named Sharon, who was tough but fair. "Dear Sharon," I wrote, "I am writing to give you a professional heads up. I am in the process of implementing firm, necessary boundaries with my family regarding personal and financial matters. It is possible they will react poorly. In the past, this has included attempts to question my emotional stability. If you should receive any unusual communication regarding my personal life, I wanted to assure you that my work remains my priority and my professional conduct is, as always, unaffected." I hit send before I could second-guess it. Next, I sent a similar, Shorter email to the social worker at Piper's school. Just letting you know that Piper and I are doing well. We are making some healthy changes to our family dynamic. If you receive any reports of concern from my extended family, please understand them in this context. It is likely a form of retaliation and not a reflection of Piper's well-being. The preemptive strike was complete. I had fortified my professional life against the coming storm. Now for myself. My hospital had an employee assistance program. I'd directed dozens of patients and their families to it, but never used it myself. I found the website. I scheduled a virtual appointment with a therapist for the following week. My hands were shaking slightly. This felt harder than the emails. Then, I opened a new browser tab. I searched for Cedar Heights Parents of Neurodivergent Kids. A support group popped up. Their last meeting topic was posted on their homepage. Holiday overload. You are not alone. I registered for their next virtual meeting. The last step, the most important one. I had built my case. I had fortified my defenses. Now, I needed an escape. I needed to replace the dread of Christmas with an actual promise. I opened a travel website. I typed in Cedar Heights to New York, train, December 24th, 2 tickets. The results loaded. There was a train leaving at 7 a.m. I booked 2 seats in the quiet car. Then, I searched for hotels. I remembered a name from an old movie, a place that sounded like magic. The Astor Grand. It was real. It was expensive. It was probably more than I should spend. I looked at the photos. A grand lobby, high ceilings, velvet chairs, and a window overlooking a street lit up with golden lights. They had a Christmas brunch. I looked at the spreadsheet, at the $11,480. I thought about the 12 side dishes I was supposed to cook for a party I was banned from. I booked a room for 2 nights. I entered my credit card details, the same card I had used to buy my father's groceries and Kara's textbooks. The confirmation email appeared in my inbox. Your holiday at the Astor Grand is confirmed. I leaned back in my chair. The apartment was still. Piper was safe in her bed. My case was built. My defenses were up. My escape was booked. My phone, which I'd left on the counter, began to buzz. A call. Marla. It stopped. A text appeared. Maria, where are you? Another. Your father is worried. Another. Maria, pick up the phone. This is not funny. I picked up the phone. I didn't read the rest of the messages. I went to my settings. I enabled Do Not Disturb. I went through the short list of people who could break through the silence. The hospital, Piper's school, my colleague Andre. I left the rest of the world. Marla, Dean, Kara, the whole constellation of obligation on the other side of a digital wall. The phone went silent, and for the second time that night, a profound quiet settled over me. But this wasn't the silence of shock. It was the silence of control. The silence lasted for 48 hours. 2 full days where my phone did not buzz with a demand, a guilt trip, or a passive-aggressive check-in. It was the quietest my life had been since I'd moved back to Ohio. The block I had put on the family group chat was a digital fortress, and I was safe inside, preparing for my trip with Piper. I went to work, I came home, I packed a small suitcase for my daughter, careful to include her noise-canceling headphones and her favorite weighted blanket. I was methodical, I was calm, the quiet was a balm. But I knew it was the quiet of a pulled-back tide, not the quiet of a calm sea. Marla was not the type to be ignored. It happened at 7 p.m. on the dot, at the worst possible time. Shift change. The main floor of Lakeview Mercy Center is a controlled chaos at that hour. The night shift, me included, is coming on. Getting reports from the day shift nurses who are exhausted and desperate to leave. Carts are rolling, phones are ringing, and the lights have that harsh, buzzing fluorescent quality that drills into your skull. I was at the central nurses station, listening to Nurse Val, my day shift counterpart. Give me the rundown on the patient in room 304. His pressure has been labile, she was saying. So Dr. Rao wants us to... Maria Dominguez. The voice sliced through the hospital din. It was sharp, cold, and utterly out of place. It wasn't the voice of a patient in pain or a worried family member. It was the voice of pure, distilled indignation. I looked up. The glass doors of the automatic entrance had slid open, and the cold December air rushed in, carrying Marla Sutton. She was not dressed for a hospital visit. She was wearing her knee-high leather boots, a cream-colored cashmere coat, and a face like thunder. Her perfume, an expensive, heavy musk, preceded her, cutting through the sterile smell of disinfectant. She was marching past the admissions desk, ignoring the volunteer who called out, "Ma'am, can I help you?" She stormed directly to the nurses' station, a public space, and slammed her leather glove onto the counter. "I have been calling you for 2 days," she hissed, her voice loud enough to make a passing doctor flinch. I did not move. I kept my hands on the counter. "Marla," I said, my voice low, "this is my job. You cannot be here." "Your job?" She laughed. A short, ugly sound. "After everything we did for you? This is how you repay us? The family that raised you when your mother was gone? You hide from us? You steal my granddaughter?" This was it, the performance, the one I had predicted. "Madame," a deep voice said. It was Marcus, one of the hospital security guards, already moving in. "This area is for staff only. You need to return to the waiting room." Marla turned on him, her eyes wide with manufactured victimhood. "She is mentally unstable," Marla announced to the entire floor, to Nurse Val, to the doctors, to the patients being wheeled past. "My stepdaughter is having a breakdown. She won't answer her father. She is emotionally erratic, and she has my granddaughter. I am worried for their safety. I am trying to help her." I saw the narrative she was building, the one my emails had been designed to diffuse. She was painting me as a hysterical woman, an unfit mother. I looked at Val. Her face was blank, professional. Beside me, Andre, another night nurse, had stopped his charting. He didn't say anything. He just moved, a subtle shift of his weight, to stand slightly beside me, his shoulder aligned with mine. It was not aggressive. It was an act of presence. He was a witness. Val slowly closed the laptop she had been using. She, too, just watched. They were not intervening. They were forming a wall. "Marla," I said again, and this time my voice was different. It wasn't the voice of her stepdaughter. It was the voice of Nurse Dominguez, the one I used for hysterical patients and combative families. It was calm, flat, and carried no emotion. "This is a medical facility. You are disrupting patient care. You need to leave." "You leave when I say." "Ma'am," Marcus the guard said, and this time his voice had an edge of steel. He put his hand on her elbow. "You are leaving now. This is your only warning." Marla tried to yank her arm away, but Marcus was solid. "You haven't heard the last of this," she spat, finally directing her venom back at me. "You are destroying this family. Your father is devastated." "We can talk after my shift is over," I said, offering the single procedural line I had rehearsed. "If you would like to schedule a conversation with a family mediator, I am open to that, but I am not discussing this here." The word mediator stopped her. It was a word she didn't control. It was a word from a world of lawyers and therapists, not the closed, feudal system of our family. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw a flicker of something new in her eyes. Not just anger, fear. I was no longer playing by her rules. "You'll regret this, Maria," she whispered, a final, theatrical threat. Marcus escorted her out of the unit. The glass doors slid shut, cutting off the sound of her expensive, angry boots on the linoleum. The nurse's station was silent for a beat. The phones seemed to have stopped ringing. Then, Nurse Val let out a long, low whistle. "Well," she said, tapping her pen on the counter. "So that's Marla." I nodded, my heart hammering, but my hands steady. "That's her." Andre just shook his head and went back to his chart. "You handled that, Dominguez," he said, not looking up. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of vital signs and IV drips, But I could feel the change. The nurses were polite, professional, but they watched me differently. They had seen the public attack, and they had seen my clinical response. The rumor mill would be churning. But Marla's performance had backfired. She hadn't looked like a concerned mother. She had looked unhinged. My preemptive email to my administrator had been the right call. No one was questioning my stability. They were questioning hers. When I got to my car at dawn, I finally checked my phone. The block had expired. It was a flood. 37 missed calls, a dozen voicemails from my father, each one escalating from, "Maria, call me," to, "This is unacceptable. Your mother is worried sick." And then there was the social media front. Kara, my half-sister, had taken to Instagram. She hadn't used my name. She didn't have to. She posted a story, a black and white photo of a single, ornate chair, the one Marla always set for my mother. The caption was simple. "Tradition isn't just a word, it's a promise. Sad when people forget what real family is about." The comments were already piling up from her friends, from distant relatives. "Thinking of you." "So true, honey. Some people are just so ungrateful." The town was small. The story was spreading. I was being painted as the villain, the cold, unfeeling daughter who had betrayed the sacred memory of her own mother. I sat in my car, the weak morning sun just beginning to cut through the gray. I felt the old, familiar sting of shame, and then something else pinged. An email. I opened it. It was from Marla. Subject: Christmas shopping list. Urgent. My blood went cold. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an accusation. It was a list. "Maria," it read, "since you are refusing to communicate, I am sending this here. I need you to pick up the following for Christmas dinner: Dean's smartwatch, the graphite band, don't get the wrong one, Kara's perfume, Chanel, you know the one, and the following from the gourmet shop for the party." It went on. A list of imported cheeses, artisan crackers, and expensive olives. She had just publicly accused me of being mentally unstable and kidnapping my child. She had sicked my sister on me, and now, not even 12 hours later, she was sending me a shopping list. A list for a party I was explicitly uninvited from. The audacity of it was breathtaking. It was the final piece of evidence, the one that proved, beyond any doubt, that her actions had nothing to do with concern. It was a power play. She had tried the public humiliation, and when that failed, she had simply reverted to the default setting. Maria, the servant. I looked at the email. I looked at Kara's Instagram post. I thought of the 12 side dishes I was supposed to be making. I went back into my phone's settings. I didn't just mute them. I didn't just set "Do Not Disturb." I selected the entire family group. My father, Marla, Kara, my aunts. I pressed the block button. This time, I didn't set a timer. I went home. I showered, scrubbing the hospital and the confrontation off my skin. I checked on Piper, who was still fast asleep, her train nightlight glowing. I got into my own bed. The sun was streaming through my curtains, and I slept. I slept for 10 straight hours, a deep, dreamless, uninterrupted sleep. It was the first time in years I had slept without the low-level hum of anticipatory anxiety, without waiting for the next text, the next demand, the next emergency. I woke up in the late afternoon. The apartment was warm and quiet. I made a cup of coffee. I sat at my laptop, the one that held the manipulation genealogy folder. I opened a new browser tab. I signed up for a free private blogging platform. I created my first post. I didn't write anything. I just wrote a title for an audience of one. If they don't save you a chair, build your own table. I had one last shift before our train left. I walked into the hospital that night feeling lighter, as if I had shed a heavy, invisible coat. I was nervous about the gossip, about the whispers. Andre was at the station, and he just nodded. "Dominguez." It was normal. That was a gift. At the end of my shift, as I was packing my bag, Nurse Val stopped me. "Hey," she said, holding out a box. It wasn't large, but it was awkwardly shaped, wrapped in plain brown paper. "This came for you," she said, her voice soft. "Well, for Piper." I looked at her, confused. "From who?" "From us," she said, gesturing vaguely to the other night shift nurses. "Your hospital family. We heard she's the new conductor." I took the box. It was heavy. I slowly peeled back the tape. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a beautifully crafted, wooden, miniature train station. It was a replica of an old-fashioned depot, complete with tiny benches and a ticket window. It was perfect. I looked up at Val. My throat suddenly thick. I couldn't speak. She just squeezed my arm. "You're a good mom, Maria," she said. "And you're a damn good nurse. Don't let anyone tell you different. Now go. Go on your vacation. You've earned it." I walked out of the hospital, carrying the small wooden station. I thought of the email, the list of demands, a smartwatch, expensive perfume, artisan cheese, and I looked at the gift in my hands, a gift that wasn't a demand, but a recognition. A gift that said, "We see you. We see your daughter. You belong." I got in my car and, for the first time, I let myself cry. They were not tears of anger or shame. They were tears of release. I walked out of the hospital with the wooden train station tucked under my arm. It was heavy, solid, and smelled faintly of paint and wood glue. It was the most real thing I had held in days. As I passed the administrator's office, Sharon, my boss, stepped out. She didn't say anything about Marla. She just handed me a small, sealed envelope from her desk. "This is for you," she said, her expression kind but professional. "A little holiday bonus. Night shift isn't easy." She paused, then added, "And Maria, that vacation you have scheduled? It is well-deserved. Do not check your work email. That's an order." I must have looked stunned. She just smiled. A small, knowing smile. "Go, be with your daughter." I drove home as the city turned a dim, pre-dawn gray. I felt a strange combination of exhaustion and adrenaline, as if I had just run a marathon. When I pulled up to my apartment building, my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Fern, was already out, shoveling her walkway with a vigor that defied her 70-odd years. She was a fixture, tough as boiled leather, and missed nothing. She stopped shoveling as I got out of the car. "Morning, nurse," she called out, her voice raspy in the cold. "Morning, Mrs. Fern." She leaned on her shovel. "That woman in the fancy coat came by yesterday. The one who drives the black Mercedes." My stomach tightened. "Oh? Mrs. Fern squinted at my apartment door. She was banging on it, looked like she was trying to start a fire with her eyes. I went out. I said, "She's not home." She tried to ask me questions. Where you were, who you were with. I told her I was busy. She jabbed the shovel into the snowbank. "You two going somewhere for the holiday?" I nodded, hesitant. "Yes, New York, for a couple of days." "Good," she nodded sharply. A little bird of a woman. "Don't you argue with me. I'll get your mail. I'll keep the packages inside my door. You just go. This place." She gestured to the quiet street. "It'll be here when you get back. Go." I was so moved I could barely speak. "Thank you, Mrs. Fern. That's really kind." "It's not kind. It's practical," she snapped, though her eyes were soft. "Snow's coming in again tomorrow. Go on. Get inside." I went inside, the warmth of my small apartment wrapping around me. I had a fortress, a professional one at the hospital, and a civilian one here on my street. That evening, after Piper was in bed, I logged on to the virtual meeting for the parent support group. My name just appeared as Maria Dian on the screen. I kept my camera off. I just listened. There were about 15 other parents. The moderator, a woman with a gentle voice, started with the topic, non-toxic holiday rituals, protecting your peace. For an hour. I listened as people shared their stories. A father whose parents insisted his nonverbal son say hello properly. A mother whose sister critiqued her son's stimming as bad behavior. And then, they shared their solutions. We decided no is a complete sentence, one woman said. Our new tradition is the 5-minute flyby, said another. We go, we show our faces, and we leave before the first passive-aggressive comment. My kid's comfort is no longer negotiable. I have a script, a father said, and I heard typing as he posted it in the chat. It says, "We are not available for that, but thank you for the invitation. We hope you have a wonderful time." I stared at the words, "We are not available for that." It was so simple, so clean. It wasn't an excuse. It wasn't a lie. It was a fact. I wrote it down on a sticky note and stuck it to my laptop. Then I wrote down another one, the one I had practiced for Marla. No. I am busy. Enjoy your dinner. I was learning a new language, the language of the boundary. Just as the meeting was wrapping up, my personal phone rang. It was an unsaved number, but local. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, a text came through. "Maria, this is Sejan Rao from PEDS. I hope this is okay. I got your number from the hospital directory. My wife, Elena, and I are having a very quiet dinner tonight before the holiday call shifts pull us all apart. Our 10-year-old son, Avi, he is a train fanatic. He heard a rumor that Piper is the resident expert on steam engines. We were wondering if you two would be willing to come over. We're just ordering pizza. Very low-key." I read the text, and read it again. It was an invitation that wasn't a demand, an invitation that centered my daughter's passion, the very thing Marla had tried to extinguish. I texted back, "Dr. Rao, we would be honored. Thank you." 2 hours later, I was standing on their doorstep. Elena Rao opened the door. She was warm, smiling, and wearing sweatpants. "Maria, Piper, come in. It smells like garlic bread. I apologize." "It smells wonderful," I said, and meant it. Their house was cozy, lived in, and full of books, and in the center of their living room was a massive, sprawling model train set. It was incredible. Piper, who had been clutching my hand, just froze. Her eyes went wide. "That," she whispered, pointing, "that's a post-war Lionel ZW transformer, and they're running it with a Santa Fe F3A unit." Avi, the Rao's son, ran out from the kitchen. "You know the ZW?" he asked, his eyes lighting up. Piper nodded, suddenly solemn. "It has 4 variable voltage circuits. It's the best one." That was it. They were gone, orbiting the train table, speaking a language I couldn't understand. Elena touched my arm. "Pizza's in the kitchen. Wine or water?" We sat at their kitchen table. We ate pizza off paper plates, and we watched our children. Piper had found the wooden conductor's hat from the hospital gift and put it on. She was standing tall, pointing. "You have to watch the boiler pressure on the articulated models," she was explaining to Avi, who was listening with rapt attention. The problem with the big boy 4884 was the wheel arrangement. I watched her. She was gesturing. She was confident. She was glowing. Dr. Rao and Elena weren't just tolerating her, they were listening. "Sajan, did you know that?" Elena asked. "About the wheel arrangement?" "I did not," Dr. Rao said, looking genuinely fascinated. "Piper, that's brilliant. Why was that a problem?" I watched my daughter explain the complexities of locomotive engineering to a pediatric cardiologist and his wife, and nobody, not once, told her to be quiet. Nobody told her she was being rude. Nobody shushed her. I felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the pizza. This, I thought, this is what respect looks like. It's this simple. It's just listening. We stayed for 2 hours. When it was time to go, Piper and Avi were already making plans to exchange manuals. On the drive home, Piper was quiet. I glanced in the rearview mirror. She was holding the wooden conductor's hat in her lap, her face serene in the glow of the streetlights. "Did you have fun, honey?" "Yes," she said. "Avi's collection is adequate." I smiled. High praise. "Mommy?" she added, her voice very small. "Yes, baby? Thank you for not making me stop talking." The words hit me so hard I almost had to pull over. "Oh, Piper," I whispered. "I will never, ever make you stop talking." The next day, our last day in Cedar Heights, I was packing. I laid out my clothes, worn nursing scrubs, old jeans, faded t-shirts. I looked at the confirmation for the Astor Grand. I had nothing to wear. I felt a sudden, sharp stab of the old insecurity. Then I got angry. I opened my laptop. I went to a department store website. I scrolled past the practical, the sensible, the gray and the beige, and I found it. A sweater. It was cashmere, soft, and a deep, beautiful moss green, the color of life growing on old stone. It was an indulgence. It was the price of 4 of Marla's emergency grocery runs. I looked at the $11,000 spreadsheet. I looked at the list of boundary-setting phrases on the sticky note. I clicked Add to Cart and paid for overnight shipping to the hotel. It was an act of self-care. It was an act of defiance. It was my new armor. While Piper napped that afternoon, I did the last 2 things on my list. First, I opened my manipulation genealogy folder. I looked at the files, the scans, the screenshots, the history of my own exploitation. I went to the cloud storage provider and upgraded my account. I paid for 2-factor authentication and the highest level of encryption. I made a secondary backup on a thumb drive that I tucked into my suitcase. This was not about revenge. This was about facts. Facts that would protect me. Second, I opened a new document. I titled it, Terms for Future Reconciliation. It was not an email. It was not a letter of anger. It was a contract. I wrote with a clinical clarity I had learned from charting. 1. Respect for Piper. This is non-negotiable. This will be defined as no derogatory language regarding her interests or her neurodiversity, no shushing, no attempts to make her act normal. She will be respected as a full member of the family, or we will not be present. 2. Financial independence. All financial entanglement is over. My role as an unpaid household manager, chef, and ATM is terminated. Requests for my professional services, event planning, cooking, will be met with a professional invoice. No further loans or gifts will be extended to my father or Marla. 3. Mandatory, moderated therapy. No reconciliation or family-wide contact will occur without structured family therapy, led by a licensed, neutral third-party mediator of my choosing. I read it over. It was cold. It was hard. And it was absolutely necessary. I saved the document. I wasn't burning the bridge. I was posting the toll. I was zipping up our suitcase when Piper woke up. She came out, rubbing her eyes, holding her favorite model train. She sat on the sofa and watched me. "You're humming," she said. I stopped. I hadn't even realized. "I guess I am." She tilted her head, studying me with that intense, focused gaze that saw everything. "Your face is different, Mommy." I touched my cheek. It felt the same. "Different how, baby?" "You're smiling," she said, as if stating a simple fact. "Like in the old pictures, the ones in the box, before we came back here." I sat down on the floor. I hadn't realized I had stopped. I hadn't realized how heavy my own expression had become, how the constant, low-grade tension of living in Marla's world had frozen my features. My daughter had noticed. "It feels good to smile," I said, my voice thick. "It's a good face," she said, and went back to her train. Before we went to bed, I went to check the mail one last time. There was just junk, and a single, small, plain white envelope, no return address, my name. Maria Dominguez was handwritten on the front in neat, blocky print. I opened it. Inside was a simple card, a pale blue snowflake on the front. I opened it. The handwriting inside was different, looping, feminine. It said, "From a survivor. The first Christmas is always the hardest. It gets easier. I promise." I stared at the words, a survivor. I didn't know who it was from. A nurse at the hospital? Someone from the parent group? A stranger in town who had seen Kara's post and knew the truth? It didn't matter. I held the card in my hand. I thought of the wooden train station. I thought of the Rouse kitchen table. I thought of Mrs. Fern's shovel. I thought of Piper's observation. I was building my table. It was small, but it was sturdy, and I was not sitting at it alone. The morning of December 24th dawned cold and sharp, the sky a bruised purple. This was it, departure day. My last shift was done. Piper was still asleep, and our train left at 7 a.m. I moved through the apartment not with the frantic energy of a holiday traveler, but with the quiet, methodical precision of a nurse preparing a surgical tray. Every item had a purpose. Every action was a pre-checked box. My laptop was open on the kitchen counter. I reviewed my fortifications one last time. First, the perimeter. My email to Sharon, my nursing administrator, had been sent. My note to Piper's school social worker had been logged. The planned vacation was on record in both of the only two institutions that mattered. Any alarms Marla tried to raise would now hit a firewall of documented professional communication. They wouldn't be seen as the cries of a concerned mother. They would be seen, exactly as I had intended, as noise, as harassment. Second, communications. I picked up my phone. It was still blessedly quiet. The block against the family group chat holding strong. But a block was a blunt instrument. I needed a scalpel. I went into my settings and created a custom filter. I unblocked them, but filtered every single one of their numbers. Marla, my father, Kara, my aunts, directly into a specific, muted folder. It would not buzz. It would not show a notification. The messages would simply arrive and be filed. Unseen, in a digital void. They would have the illusion of screaming at me, but I would not hear them. It was the digital equivalent of soundproofing. I then went to my favorites list and confirmed my emergency-only contacts. The hospital's main line, Piper's school, Andre, and Mrs. Fern. They were the only ones who could get through. Third, the legal framework. I opened the Terms for Future Reconciliation document, the one I had written for myself. It was my contract. I added a new clause at the end. Addendum. In the event of any public slander or false accusations made against my character or my fitness as a mother, all informal communication will cease immediately. All future contact must then be initiated by a licensed third-party mediator, with a written agreement that all sessions will be recorded and transcribed at the initiating party's expense. I saved the file. I was not planning to use it. I was simply ensuring it was loaded. Fourth, Piper, the most important variable. Her small suitcase was by the door. I had packed her favorite clothes, her model trains, and the new wooden station for my hospital family, but this was a tactical operation. I opened her bag and checked the sensory toolkit one last time. Her heavy, noise-canceling headphones, a small, soft square of velvet she liked to rub, a small tin of lip balm that smelled like vanilla, a scent she found calming. I had also taken a small index card and drawn simple pictures. Headphones, a blanket, a book, a quiet time icon. I'd laminated it with packing tape and attached it to her zipper with a piece of string, a nonverbal tool for her to point to if the world became too loud. I was not just protecting myself, I was protecting her. With these preparations in place, I executed the final, pre-departure steps. I woke Piper gently. It's time, baby. It's train day. Her eyes opened, instantly alert. The Astor Grand? The Astor Grand, I confirmed. While she got dressed, I moved to the public-facing part of the plan. I took a photo, not of us, just of her small red suitcase and her little brown snow boots, standing side by side on the mat by the door. It was innocent. It was happy. I posted it on my social media, but I didn't post it to the world. I set the audience to close friends, a curated list of about 20 people. It included Andre and Val from the hospital, Dr. Rao, and a few old friends from college who knew my family's history. The caption was light and breezy. Off on a well-deserved adventure with my favorite conductor. See you both in a few days. Wishing everyone a peaceful holiday. It was a defensive move disguised as a life update. It created a timeline. It established my state of mind as happy and my trip as planned. It was an alibi of sanity, delivered to a jury of my chosen peers, an antidote to Kara's tradition post. Next, I opened my email. I composed a single message. It was my one and only piece of outgoing communication to the family. I addressed it only to my father. Dean, I did not include Marla. Subject: Christmas. Dad, I wrote, this is to notify you that Piper and I will be absent for the holiday. We will be out of town. Please do not contact me. I wish you and the family a peaceful Christmas. I hit send. It was not an apology. It was not an explanation. It was a notification of fact, a sterile, informational memo. Then, I opened the Notes app on my phone. I wrote down the scripts I had learned from the parent group. I am not participating in this discussion. I am not available to talk about this right now. That does not work for me. They were saved, ready to be copied and pasted. I would not be drawn into an argument. I would not defend. I would not explain. I would be a gray rock. Finally, I set the automated Do Not Disturb on my phone. I scheduled it to begin at 12 noon today, December 24th. I scheduled it to end at midnight on December 25th. This was my anticipation of their tactics. The first barrage would come when they realized I wasn't coming over to cook. The second, more vicious barrage would come tomorrow, on Christmas Day. When my absence became a public-facing problem, my phone would be a silent fortress during the peak hours of their assault. Everything was done. The bags were packed. The digital walls were built. The escape was planned. I put on my coat. I helped Piper with hers. We stood by the door. I pulled out my phone one last time, just to do a final check of the apartment. I locked the deadbolt. Then, I opened the app for my smart doorbell, just to set it to away mode. The app opened, showing a live feed of my empty, snowy porch. Below it was a list of events. Motion detected, 3:04 a.m., a raccoon, probably. Motion detected, yesterday, 4:18 p.m., Mrs. Fern, shoveling. And then I saw one from 3 days ago, before the hospital confrontation, before the public meltdown. It was the day Marla had sent the first text, the no room for you text. The event log read, person detected, 4:30 p.m. I remembered that. I had been home. Just before my shift, Marla had come by, unannounced, furious that I hadn't responded to her text. Mrs. Fern had seen her. I had spoken to her briefly on the porch, telling her I had to get to work. It had been unpleasant. I had blocked it out. I was in a hurry. I almost closed the app, but my finger brushed the play button. The video began to load. Buffering. I was impatient, ready to go. The clip started. The timestamp read, December 21st. I saw myself, in my blue scrubs, standing in my own doorway. I looked exhausted. Marla's voice, tinny and sharp, came through the speaker. You are not going to ignore me. Maria, you are not going to disrespect this family. Marla, I have to go to work. My own voice said. I sounded so tired. You will not walk away from me. In the video, I saw myself try to close the door. Marla's hand shot out and slammed it open. I am speaking to you. This is my house, Marla. You need to leave. And then it happened. I watched, my blood turning to ice. I saw Marla's face contort with rage. I saw her hand, the one with the large, gaudy diamond ring, fly up. I saw my own arm lift, a reflexive, defensive block, but she was fast. Her hand connected with the side of my face. It wasn't a gentle tap. It was a slap, a hard, stinging crack that echoed in the tiny speaker. My head snapped to the side. The porch was silent for a second. Then I heard her voice, low and venomous. Now you listen to me. Your father is sick of this. You will be at that house tomorrow, and you will be in the kitchen, or you will get out. You will get out of this town, and you will never see us again. Do you understand me? I watched myself in the video. I just stood there, my hand on my cheek. I didn't say a word. I just slowly, deliberately, closed the door in her face. The clip ended. I stood in my hallway, my coat on, my daughter waiting by the door. I was shaking. I had I had completely blocked it. The shock, the shame of it. I had buried it so deep I had forgotten it had even happened. I had focused on the hospital, on the texts. But this was a physical assault. And the camera saw it. The camera recorded it. "Mommy?" Piper asked, pulling on my glove. "Is it train time?" I looked at her. Then I looked at the phone. My hands were moving, my tactical brain taking over from the shock. I tapped download. I saved the video clip to my phone. I uploaded it to my encrypted cloud. I placed it in the manipulation genealogy folder. I renamed the file Evidence Exhibit A. This changed everything. My soft legal plan was no longer soft. I wasn't just dealing with manipulation, I had proof of abuse. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I put the phone in my pocket. I looked at Piper and forced my face into a smile. The one she said she missed. "Yes, baby," I said, my voice clear and steady. "It's train time." I opened the door, and we walked out into the cold morning air, leaving the locked apartment and its silent, digital witness behind. The train station in Cedar Heights was a lonely, wind-blasted platform at 6:30 in the morning. It was just us, a few other solitary travelers, and the biting cold. Piper, vibrating with an excitement that defied the hour, wore her wooden conductor's hat. She held my hand, her small gloved fingers tight in mine. The train emerged from the pre-dawn darkness, a single bright eye cutting through the gloom, its horn a low, mournful promise. We climbed aboard. The car was warm and smelled of coffee and old upholstery. As the conductor, a tall man with a face as weathered and kind as old leather, came by. He saw Piper's hat. He stopped. "Conductor," he said, tipping his own cap, "welcome aboard my train." Piper, usually shy, beamed. "I'm going to New York," she announced. "A very important run," he agreed, punching our tickets. Then he reached into his breast pocket. "Every good conductor needs this for the Christmas run." He handed her not a ticket, but a small silver paper bell, the kind that made a thin, tinny jingle. On its side, stamped in blue ink, were 2 words: "Real Christmas." Piper took it like it was a relic. She held it up, ringing it gently. "Real Christmas," she whispered to herself. She clutched it in her hand. With a deep metallic groan and a powerful lurch, the train began to move. I settled into the seat, Piper already pressed against the glass, and I watched my old life slide away. The window was fogged at the edges, framing the world I was leaving. I saw the town recede, a reverse timeline of my own small prison. First, the low beige monolith of Lakeview Mercy Center, its windows still lit in the dark, my place of work, my battleground, my Al-B-I. It looked small and insignificant from a distance. Then, the blocks of our neighborhood. I saw the roof of our apartment building, the chimney on Mrs. Fern's little house, my tiny, fortified island, and finally, as the tracks curved eastward, I caught a glimpse through the skeletal winter trees of the sprawling roof of my father's house, the house where I was no longer a daughter, the house where Marla stood guard. The video of the slap, the one I had discovered just hours ago, played in my mind, silent and brutal. I felt a phantom sting on my cheek. I hadn't just been uninvited, I had been assaulted. The train picked up speed. The click-clack of the wheels a rhythmic, hypnotic chant. Get out, get out, get out. The house vanished. The town vanished. It was just us, moving at 70 miles an hour, swallowed by the gray, snowy flatlands of Ohio. I was physically, undeniably, leaving. My phone was heavy in my coat pocket. I pulled it out. The Do Not Disturb was active, but my custom filter was the real shield. I opened the messaging app. I saw the filtered folder I had created. There was a small, red circle on it with a number. 15. 15 messages had arrived since we left the station. 15 texts from Marla, my father, Kara. 15 attempts to breach the wall. They were just a number, not a vibration, not a sound, not a demand that jolted my nervous system. They were just data, caught like angry wasps in a digital jar. I felt a lightness in my chest that was almost giddy. I was not hiding. I was not defending. I was managing. This was control. I opened my social media. I found the picture I'd taken of Piper's boots and suitcase. I posted it to my close friends list. The caption was simple, neutral, and true. A much-needed mother-daughter vacation. It was a pin in the map, a counter-narrative. We are fine. We are happy. We are where we are supposed to be. Hours later, the world outside the window changed. The flatlands gave way to hills, then to the dense, sprawling suburbs, and finally, to the city. We emerged from the tunnel into the magnificent, echoing chaos of Grand Central Station. The noise, the scale, the sheer number of people. It was the opposite of Cedar Heights. I held Piper's hand tightly. We took a taxi. The city was a glorious, overwhelming assault of light and sound. And then we pulled up to the Astor Grand. A doorman in a deep green greatcoat opened the cab door. "Welcome to the Astor Grand, ladies," he said, and he smiled, a real smile. He looked at Piper in her conductor's hat and didn't blink. "Right this way, conductor." We walked into the lobby, and I stopped breathing. It was not a room, it was an experience. The ceiling was 3 stories high, vaulted and gilded. A fireplace large enough to roast an ox was crackling in the corner. In the center stood the most enormous Christmas tree I had ever seen, dripping with white lights and golden ribbons. It smelled of fresh pine, old leather, and something sweet, like cinnamon. The air was filled with the low, happy murmur of conversation and the sound of a piano playing softly. Piper, who could be so easily overwhelmed by new sensory information, just let go of my hand. She walked to the very center of the vast, plush rug, right under the massive crystal chandelier. She looked up, and she spun around, just once, her arms outstretched. A man in a perfectly tailored suit, the hotel manager, was walking past. He saw her. He didn't frown. He didn't look at me with pity, or at her with annoyance. He simply paused, waited for her to finish her spin, and gave her a small, discreet bow. I walked to the check-in desk, my legs feeling weak. The woman behind the polished marble counter looked up. "Welcome, Ms. Dominguez. We are so glad to have you." Her smile was genuine. "And this just arrived for you." She handed me the box containing my new green sweater. "And we are delighted to have you, too," she said, looking past me at Piper. "That is a very official hat." We got to our room on the 14th floor. It was beautiful. Thick, soft carpet, heavy velvet curtains. I walked to the window. It overlooked the avenue. A river of golden taxi lights flowed below. Piper ran in, bounced on the bed, and then went to the window beside me, pressing her hands to the cold glass. "It's like the train set," she whispered. "All the lights." I stood there, watching the city, and it hit me. It wasn't a thought. It was a physical blow. A wave of realization that buckled my knees. This was what normal was supposed to feel like. Not this specific luxury, not the expensive room, but the ease, the absence of tension, the simple, human kindness from the doorman, the manager, the woman at the desk, the feeling that my daughter was not a problem to be managed, the feeling that her joy was not an inconvenience, the feeling that I was not a servant on probation, required to earn my keep, one yes at a time. We were just guests. We were just people, allowed to exist, allowed to take up space. "It was supposed to be like this," I whispered to the glass. "It was always supposed to be this easy." The weight of the $11,480, of the 12-dish dinners, of the endless invisible labor, settled on me. It wasn't a family. It was a cult of one, with Marla as the leader, and I had just bought my way out. We ordered room service, 2 cheeseburgers that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. We ate them sitting on the floor, watching the lights, and listening to the distant, muffled sound of city sirens. Piper was exhausted from the excitement. She changed into her pajamas, crawled into the massive, clean-smelling bed and was asleep in minutes. She was still clutching the little silver paper bell. Her breathing was soft and even. That small sound, the sound of her peace, was the only thing that mattered. It was a gentle, powerful frequency that drowned out all the noise of the last 4 years. I took a long, hot shower. I unpacked my bag and found the box. I took out the green sweater. It was softer than I imagined. I put it on. It felt like armor. It felt like a hug. I sat in the armchair by the window, my laptop open. Not the spreadsheet, not the evidence folder. I opened my private blog, the one with the title, "If They Don't Save You a Chair, Build Your Own Table." I looked at the blank page, and I started to write. We were not the problem. For years, I was told I was too sensitive, that Piper was too difficult, that I was ungrateful, that I was breaking my father's heart. It was a lie. We were not the problem. Our presence was the problem. Our existence, separate from their needs, was the problem. A daughter who isn't a servant is a rebellion. A child who isn't normal is an embarrassment. We were not the problem. We were the mirror they refused to look in. We were never the problem. Not once. I was about to close the laptop when my phone lit up. Not a buzz, just the screen. It was a text from an aloud number. Dr. Rao. My heart leaped into my throat. "Maria," the text read, "I hope you and Piper are settled in and having a wonderful time. I am writing you on my break. A heads up. Your stepmother, Marla, called the hospital tonight." I stopped breathing. "She called the main line asking for you, saying it was a critical family emergency. It got routed to me as I'm the on-call PEDS attending. She was agitated. She said you were emotionally unstable and had taken your daughter against medical advice, which made no sense. Maria, I want you to know. I told her you were on a pre-approved, well-deserved vacation. I told her you are one of our best nurses and a fantastic mother. And I told her that if she called the hospital line again with non-medical concerns, I would have her number blocked by security." I read the text twice. He hadn't just deflected. He had defended. He had built a firewall of his own. The text continued. "Enjoy your vacation. Maria, you are exactly where you need to be. Tell Piper that Avi is very impressed with her knowledge of boiler pressure." I typed back, my fingers shaking. "I don't have words. Thank you. Sejan, thank you." I put the phone down. My body flooded with relief. I had allies. I was not alone in this. I looked at the phone one last time before plugging it in to charge. The icon for my doorbell app was on the screen. It had a small red 1 on it, a new event, one that had been logged since I left. It wasn't a person-detected alert, just a motion alert. It had happened tonight, Christmas Eve. Someone, or something, had been on my porch. The video thumbnail was just a dark, grainy shape in the snow. I was too tired. I was too peaceful to let it in. It wasn't Marla. It could wait. Tomorrow was Christmas. I would open it tomorrow morning. I marked it as unread and turned off the screen. I woke up on Christmas morning to the sound of a small, tinny bell. Piper was already awake, sitting up in her bed in the bright hotel room, shaking the silver paper bell from the conductor. "It's Christmas, Mommy. It's real Christmas." I smiled, the sleep fading. "Merry Christmas, baby." The sun was streaming through the curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The room felt peaceful, safe, a bubble of warmth high above the city. I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in years. Then, I looked at my phone. The automated "Do Not Disturb" I had set for the holiday had expired at midnight. The fortress wall had come down, right on schedule. The phone was a wasteland. The sheer volume of notifications made the screen lag. 38 text messages, 22 missed calls, a cascade of voicemails, all from the filtered folder, all from them. I opened the folder, my heart beginning a low, clinical thrum. It was exactly what I had predicted, the escalation. The first texts were from my father, starting at 6 a.m. "Maria, I am begging you, call us. Your mother is beside herself. This isn't a joke anymore. You are ruining Christmas. Then came Marla's barrage, a rapid-fire assault. Kara's in-laws are here and everyone is asking where you are. You are embarrassing this family. Your father's heart is skipping beats. You are putting his health at risk. And then, the one I had been unconsciously waiting for, the nuclear option. A text from my father at 7:03 a.m. Maria, Marla has collapsed. We think it's a heart attack. She is asking for you. We are at the hospital. My God, what have you done? I read it. I read it again. The words were designed to shatter my newfound peace, to flood my system with panic and guilt, to make me drop everything and run back, begging for forgiveness at a hospital bedside. The old Maria would have been in a cab to the train station before her heart even restarted. The old Maria would have been sobbing. The new Maria picked up the hotel phone. I did not call my father back. I did not text Marla. I called the charge nurse at Lakeview Mercy Center, the hospital where they always went, the one where I worked. Hi, Val, it's Maria Dominguez, I said, my voice perfectly level. I know this is a strange request, but can you check the ER admissions for a Marla Sutton or a Dean Dominguez? Honey, you're on vacation, Val's voice came back, warm and confused. I know, just humor me. My family is claiming a medical emergency. I heard her typing. A long pause. Maria, she said, and her voice was different. It was hard. There's no Marla Sutton, no Dean Dominguez. We haven't had a cardiac event come in all morning. The ER is dead. Why? That's all I needed to know. Val, thank you. Merry Christmas. I hung up. I did not stop there. I was a nurse. I was thorough. I called the admissions desk at St. Anne's, the only other hospital in the county. Same result. No Marla Sutton. No heart attack. It was a lie, a calculated, venomous lie, designed to weaponize my empathy, to use my medical training against me. As if on cue, a new text from my father appeared. If you are not here by 3 p.m. today, you are no longer a part of this family. We will consider you disowned. It was followed by one from Marla, who had apparently made a miraculous recovery from her fictional heart attack. I am calling Piper's school on Monday. I am calling Child Protective Services. You are unstable. You are a danger to that child. You will not get away with this. The threat against Piper. That was the line. She had crossed it. My hands did not shake. I was not angry. I was cold. I was a surgeon preparing for an amputation. I methodically screenshotted every message, the heart attack lie, the 3 p.m. deadline, the threat to call CPS. I attached them to a new, encrypted email. I sent it to my therapist, the one I had booked through the EAP. The subject line was simple. For my records, in the body, I wrote one sentence. This is the textbook manipulation and coercive control we discussed. I am safe. My daughter is safe. We are proceeding with our vacation. I hit send. I was no longer just building a case. I was actively documenting a campaign of harassment. Mommy, Piper said, pulling me from my thoughts. It's brunch time. You promised. I looked at her bright, innocent face, her conductor's hat already on. She was the reality. The phone was the illusion. You are absolutely right, I said. Let's go have the best Christmas brunch in the world. I put on my green sweater. It was my armor. The ballroom at the Astor Grand was breathtaking. It was a wonderland of white linen, sparkling crystal, and poinsettias. A string quartet was playing in the corner. The smell of waffles and coffee filled the air. We were seated by a tall window overlooking the park, snow clinging to the bare branches. It was magic. I watched Piper. She was mesmerized by the dessert table, by the ice sculptures. She was quiet, but her eyes were taking in everything. She was happy. She was safe. We were eating small, perfect pastries when she looked at me, her head tilted with that piercing, logical way she had. Mommy, she asked, her voice clear in the gentle hum of the room. Why does Grandma Marla tell lies? I stopped, my fork halfway to my mouth. What do you mean, honey? She tells lies, Piper stated, as if it were a simple fact, like the sky being blue. She said Mr. Henderson didn't like my trains, but he did. I saw his face. And you said she told a lie about being sick. I looked at my 8-year-old daughter, who had cut through all the adult complexity, all the emotional shrapnel, and had landed on the simple, unvarnished truth. She lied. Sometimes, Piper, I said, choosing my words with care, people tell lies when they are scared, or when they want to make someone else do something they don't want to do. It's a way to control them, like when Tommy in your class told the teacher he was sick so he wouldn't have to take the spelling test. Piper considered this. So, she's like Tommy, she concluded. She's trying to get out of a test. Yes, I said, a slow, dawning realization hitting me. I think that's exactly right. Baby, she's being tested, and she's failing. She nodded, satisfied. Okay, can I have that chocolate thing? The rest of the brunch was light. Her simple, brilliant observation had set me free. Marla wasn't a monster. She was just Tommy in my class, a bully, a cheater, and I was no longer going to let her copy my homework. When we got back to the room, Piper curled up with her model trains and the new wooden station, creating a complex new railway line on the thick carpet. I sat down at the desk. It was time to build my table. First, the public part. I went to my private blog. I wrote the post I had been composing in my head, the one titled, "If They Don't Save You a Chair, Build Your Own Table." I wrote about the power of creating your own traditions. I wrote about the joy of putting your child's peace above the demands of toxic dynamics. I did not use their names. I did not mention the slap. I did not mention the lies. I didn't need to. I just wrote about my freedom. And at the end, I attached a picture. It was a selfie I had taken of me and Piper at the brunch table. I was in my green sweater, and I was smiling. A real, wide-mouthed, crinkle-eyed smile. Piper was beside me, her cheeks full of pastry, grinning at the camera. We looked, unequivocally, happy. I made the post public. Second, the private part, the strategic part. I opened a new email. I composed it with the same clinical precision as a patient chart. To Dean Dominguez, Marla Sutton, Cara Dominguez, CC, Pastor Michael Davies, Cedar Heights Community Church, Dr. Eris Thorne, my therapist. Subject, our future. I am writing this to confirm that Piper and I are safe, healthy, and on a planned vacation. The campaign of harassment, threats, and emotional manipulation you have engaged in over the past 72 hours, including, but not limited to, false reports of a heart attack, threats to my parental custody, and arbitrary deadlines for my disownment, is now over. It has been fully documented and forwarded to my legal counsel and therapist. I am not angry, I am awake. For 4 years, I have been your unpaid chef, your event planner, your bank, and your emotional punching bag. This has ended. Attached, you will find 2 documents. 1. A summary of the $11,480 in finances I have personally contributed to your household since my return. This is not a bill. It is a receipt. It is the price of my silence, which I am no longer willing to pay. 2. A document titled, Terms for Future Reconciliation. These are my non-negotiable conditions for any future contact with any of you. They include mandatory family therapy with a mediator of my choosing, a complete financial separation, and a written code of conduct regarding the treatment of my daughter. I will not be responding to any further calls, texts, or emails. If you agree to these terms, you may have your new family counselor contact Dr. Thorne to begin the process. Until then, we have nothing to discuss. Maria Dominguez. I hit send. The whoosh sound of the email leaving my outbox was the loudest, most satisfying sound I had ever heard. By copying the town pastor, I had taken the narrative out of their control. Marla could no longer twist the story to her friends, the one person she couldn't lie to. The moral authority of her own social circle now had the unvarnished truth, and the receipts. The rest of the day was quiet. I played trains with Piper. We watched an old Christmas movie. We were in our bubble. That evening, an email arrived. It was not from my family. It was from an unfamiliar address. The subject line just said, Kara's email. I opened it. It was from a man named Evan Bradley. Ms. Dominguez, it read. My name is Evan Bradley. I am Kara's fiancé. I am also the son of 2 child psychologists. Kara is distraught and forwarded me your email. Seeking advice. I have just spent the last hour reading your terms and reviewing the financial spreadsheet you attached. I do not know the full story, but I know a pattern of coercive control and financial abuse when I see one. The empty chair story is one I have heard before, in my mother's case files. This is not a family dispute. This is a pattern of systemic abuse. I have told Kara I cannot marry into a family that refuses to address this. I have advised her that our engagement is on hold until she and your entire family are in active, individual, and group therapy. I just wanted you to know that you are not crazy, and you are not wrong. I closed the laptop, a crack, the first, tiny and hairline crack in their fortress. It hadn't come from my father. It had come from an outsider, an expert. I checked my public blog post. It had dozens of likes from my friends. And then I saw a public comment, not on my post, but on Kara's tradition post, Marla. In a desperate countermove, had reshared Kara's post on her own Facebook page, writing a long, flowery caption about the sacred tradition of the empty chair, honoring those who have gone. But the comments were not what she expected. A former neighbor wrote, "A beautiful tradition, Marla, but I was just thinking, where was Maria this year?" And then another, from someone I didn't even know. I saw Maria's post. She looked so happy. Why has she never had a seat at the table? The narrative was broken. The public was confused. The questions had begun. I was about to turn off my phone when a hotel message slid under our door. I opened it. It was a thick cream-colored card from the Astor Grand. On the front, the hotel's crest. Inside, a handwritten note. Dear Conductor Piper, it read, we hope you are enjoying your Christmas. We have it on good authority that you are the finest train expert to ever grace our hotel. Keep up the good work. It was signed, The Concierge Team. Tucked inside were 2 tickets to the New York Transit Museum. Piper held the card, her eyes wide. She looked at me, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated joy. They know my job, she whispered. I looked at her, at that smile. That was it. That was the win. The $11,000. The slap. The lies. They were just the cost of admission to this moment. This, right here, was the victory. This was the real Christmas. While Piper and I slept peacefully in our New York bubble, the email I had sent, part strategic missile, part legal declaration, had detonated in Cedar Heights. The home I had fled was not quiet. It was the epicenter of a collapse. The Christmas dinner at my father's house, the one meant to impress Kara's new in-laws, was a disaster. The Bradleys, Evan's parents, were polite, but they were also trained psychologists. They sat in the opulent dining room, observing. My father, Dean, was visibly pale, picking at his food. Marla was a vibrating wire of false cheer, her voice too high, her laughter too sharp. Kara was red-eyed, having clearly been crying. The first domino fell when Evan Bradley, Kara's fiancé, pushed his plate away. He had not taken a bite. Dean, Marla, he said, his voice quiet but carrying across the table. I'm not here to eat. Kara forwarded me her sister's email. I've read it. Marla's fork clattered onto her plate. Evan, this is a private family matter. It's a misunderstanding. Maria she's not well. She seems perfectly well to me. Evan's mother, Dr. Bradley, interjected smoothly, folding her hands on the table. Her terms for reconciliation were some of the clearest, most well-articulated boundaries I have ever seen, and the financial spreadsheet was illuminating. My father winced. The mention of the $11,000, $480 landing like a physical blow. "I won't have this," Marla snapped, her mask slipping. "This is my home. This is Christmas." "It is Christmas," Evan agreed, "which is why I'm only going to say this once." He turned to Kara, his expression softening, but his resolve was iron. "I love you, but I cannot marry you. Not like this. I will not have my children exposed to this dynamic." "Evan, no," Kara whispered, fresh tears welling. "This engagement is on hold," Evan said, standing. His parents stood with him. "It is paused, indefinitely, until every single person in this family, starting with you, Kara, and you, Dean, and especially you, Marla, is in separate, qualified, intensive therapy. I will not have my family built on a foundation of lies and abuse." Kara looked at her mother, her eyes wide with a new, terrifying doubt. She saw Marla's face not as concerned, but as furious, cornered. For the first time, Kara didn't see a victim. She saw the person Evan was describing. "She's right, isn't she?" "My father, Dean," suddenly whispered, his voice cracking. He was looking at the empty place settings, at the untouched food. "All of it. I let Marla handle it. It was easier. I just wanted it to be quiet." He looked at the Bradleys, his eyes pleading. "I just wanted it to be quiet, and I've been quiet for too long. My God, what have I done?" That admission, the first crack in his decades-long dam of denial, hung in the air. The Bradleys left. The dinner was over. The other dominoes were already falling across town. The email I had sent, with its cold, hard receipts, had been CC'd to Pastor Michael Davies. He read it in his study after the Christmas service, and his blood ran cold. He had seen the public face of Marla Sutton for years. He had read the spreadsheet. He recognized the pattern. He called the house, demanding a meeting with Dean and Marla, stating his intention to have the conversation recorded for the protection of all parties. Marla, hearing his voice on speakerphone, shrieked, "Absolutely not! How dare he! I will not be handled by the church." She grabbed the phone from Dean's hand and hung up. The pastor sat in his study, the dial tone buzzing in his ear. Her refusal was the loudest confession she could have made. At the same time, another email was circulating, an anonymous one. It had been sent to the board members of the Cedar Heights Community Fund. The subject line was simple: a question about volunteer contributions. Inside, there was no text, just 3 photographs. The first was a picture, clearly taken through a kitchen window, of me, Maria, my hair in a messy bun, exhaustion etched on my face, pulling sheet pans of hundreds of appetizers out of an oven. The timestamp was from the night before the annual fundraiser. The second was a photo of me hauling foil-wrapped trays from my car into the community center, timestamped the next morning. The third was the official photo from the Cedar Heights Gazette, showing Marla Sutton in a $3,000 dress, accepting the Volunteer of the Year plaque, standing in front of the exact same trays of food. The board chair, a prominent lawyer, saw the photos and immediately called the fund's largest corporate donor, a man named Henderson, Mr. Henderson, who had once been charmed by Piper's knowledge of trains, was a man who despised being fooled. "This is not a criminal investigation," Henderson stated, his voice flat. "But my company's name is attached to that plaque. I want an immediate internal audit of your event protocols and a full public clarification of volunteer labor versus credited recognition. We do not reward people who take credit for the work of others." Marla's primary source of power, her public image, was now under official review. Back at the house, the family was imploding. Kara, devastated by Evan's ultimatum, had locked herself in her room. She was looking for a reason, any reason, to believe her mother, to believe that Maria was the liar. She tore through Marla's pristine office, pulling open filing cabinets. She was looking for something to refute the financial claims. Instead, she found a folder labeled Gala. Inside were receipts, invoices, An invoice from Artisan Floral Concepts for $2,000, an invoice from Cedar Heights Event Rentals for the linens, and an invoice from Gourmet Bites Catering for 12 assorted hot and cold appetizer selections. Kara stared at the paper. It was for the last gala, the one where Marla had given a tearful speech about how she had stayed up all night, her fingers raw, making every single bite herself. Kara had believed her. Everyone had believed her. It wasn't just that she'd taken credit for Maria's work. She had taken credit for everyone's work, all while claiming the exhaustion of a martyr. The lie was not a simple act. It was the foundation of her entire identity. Kara sank to the floor, the invoices clutched in her hand, the structure of her childhood collapsing around her. Downstairs, Dean was alone in the dining room. The untouched turkey sat congealing. He was staring at the empty chair. His phone buzzed. It was an old college friend, someone who had known his first wife, Ilara, my mother. "Dean," the friend said, his voice hesitant. "Just saw Marla's big Facebook post about tradition, the one about the empty chair. It brought a tear to my eye. But I was just saying to Sarah, it's funny. I always remember Ilara saying that." Dean froze. "What?" "Yeah, back when her mother died, Ilara always said, 'At the holidays, we should always save a chair for those who can't be here.' I guess I never knew Marla knew Ilara's mother." "She didn't," Dean said, his voice hollow. "Oh, well, it's a lovely tradition to carry on." Dean hung up the phone. The room felt suddenly, unbearably cold. It wasn't a tribute, it was theft. Marla had stolen my mother's memory, one of the few things I had left, and had polished it, branded it, and used it as her own personal prop for social gain for 2 decades. He walked to the chair, the sacred chair. He ran his hand down the ornate carved leg, and his fingers snagged on a small, deep scratch in the dark wood. His mind flashed back, not to a childhood memory, but to an evening 3 years ago. Marla had been enraged about a scuff mark on the hardwood floor from a dinner party. She had thrown a bucket and a rag at me, at Maria, a 30-year-old woman, a registered nurse. "You," Marla had snarled, "will get on your hands and knees, and you will scrub this floor until it shines." And he had stood there. He had said nothing. He had watched me kneel. He had watched me scrub the floor as my stepmother watched. Her arms crossed. The scratch, he knew with a sickening certainty, was from the metal rim of the bucket, or maybe my shoe, as I knelt in humiliation in the shadow of my own mother's stolen chair. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely operate his phone. He fumbled it open, aimed the camera at the small, deep scratch. He took a photo. He opened his messages, found my name. He sent the picture. He wrote no words. There were no words for what he had done. It was a silent, digital confession. With her reputation under audit and her family in open revolt, Marla did what she always did when cornered. She attacked. She got on the phone. She called her sister. She called her friends. "You will not believe what Maria did," she wept. "She's unstable. She came to the house, and when I tried to reason with her, she hit me. She assaulted me, right on the porch." The rumor spread like fire, but it hit a firewall. The rumor reached the hospital, where Nurse Val heard it. Val, who had seen Marla's first performance, just rolled her eyes. She made one call. "Marcus," she said to the head of security, "just to confirm, when Mrs. Sutton was here making a scene, did she ever allege that Maria had been violent?" Marcus laughed. "Violent? No. Ma'am, Ms. Dominguez was the calm one. Mrs. Sutton was the one making threats about mental instability. My report states Ms. Dominguez was professional, and Mrs. Sutton was escorted off the premises for disruptive behavior. That story's dead wrong." Within an hour, the counter-rumor was out. Marla had been escorted out of the hospital for disruptive behavior. Her lie had backfired, making her look even more unhinged. The final dominoes were the quiet ones. In the fractured silence of the house, the family group chat, the one I was no longer in, began to light up. Is it true Evan called off the wedding? I saw Maria's post. She looks happy in New York. Wait, Marla told me Maria was having a breakdown. I heard Marla was kicked out of the hospital. That story about the chair, I don't know, it's all starting to sound strange. A private message lit up on Dean's phone. It was from his sister. Dean, tell me the truth. What is really going on? I'm starting to think we've been wrong. I'm starting to think Maria is right. Marla was cornered. Her husband was a ghost, staring at a chair. Her daughter was locked in her room, holding receipts. Her fiancé was gone. Her charity was auditing her. Her pastor was judging her. Her lies were dead. She had one last move, one last stage. The one place in Cedar Heights where she was still royalty. The community fund's Star of Cedar Heights charity gala was tonight, Christmas night. She was the guest of honor. She went to her room. She sat at her vanity. She looked at her reflection. She was not defeated. She was at war. She picked up the phone and called the gala's frantic event coordinator. Yes, this is Marla Sutton, she said, her voice suddenly smooth, strong, and full of theatrical pain. I need to make a change to my keynote address. I have something very personal I need to share. A tribute about the sanctity of family and the pain of betrayal. Please, make sure the spotlight is on me. She was not going to apologize. She was going to double down. She would take the stage, paint herself as the ultimate victim, and use her public platform to destroy me. The afternoon of Christmas Day, in the quiet, sunlit sanctuary of our room at the Astor Grand, I found out about the war. It was not a phone call. It was a discovery. A friend from Cedar Heights texted me. Maria, this is awful. Are you seeing this? She sent me a link. It was to the Cedar Heights Community Fund website. The homepage had been updated. The Star of Cedar Heights Gala, the event that was happening in just a few hours, had a new, official, last-minute theme. A chair for her, a special tribute to Alara Dominguez. My mother's name. My blood ran cold. They were not just invoking her memory. They had stolen her name. Marla was the guest of honor. The billing was grotesque. It was a strategic masterpiece of malice. She was simultaneously eulogizing my mother, cementing her own sainthood as the keeper of the sacred tradition, and painting me, by my very absence, as the monstrous, ungrateful daughter who had abandoned her post. She would be the grieving widow. I would be the silent, cruel apostate. The entire town would be there to watch. I looked at Piper. She was on the floor, lining up her model trains, safe in the bubble we had built. This was not a distant battle. This was an execution. Marla was about to publicly execute my character, using my mother's legacy as the weapon. I stood up. My mind was not hot with rage. It was ice cold with clarity. This was not a fight I could win from New York. I could not let her do this. I could not let her use my mother's name to destroy me. I looked at the clock. It was 3 p.m. I looked at the train schedule. There was an Acela Express leaving Grand Central in 45 minutes. It would get me to Cedar Heights at 7:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the gala began. I made a call. Sajan? I said, my voice low and steady. Dr. Rao. By some miracle, he and his family had also come to New York for the holiday. A last-minute trip. They were staying just a few blocks away. I have an insane request. It is the most important favor I will ever ask. I explained. I did not need to ask twice. We'll be there in 10 minutes, he said. Elena and Avi will take Piper to dinner. They'll have a sleepover. Go, Maria. Go and end this. Your daughter will be safe with us. I kissed Piper goodbye. She was confused. Mommy, where are you going? Mommy has to go to a work meeting, baby. I lied, hating the taste of it. It's an emergency. Dr. Rao is going to take you to see the big trains. I will be back. I promise. I was on the train, hurtling back toward Ohio. Before Piper's kiss had faded from my cheek, the world was a dark, snowy blur outside the window. I did not rest. I went to war. My phone was my command center. First, the legal warning. I drafted an email. My fingers flew across the glass. It was not addressed to Marla. It was addressed to the entire board of the Cedar Heights Community Fund, including Mr. Henderson, the primary sponsor. I CC'd Pastor Michael Davies. Subject: urgent legal notice. Cease and desist. Misappropriation of name and likeness. A chair for her gala. To the members of the board. My name is Maria Dominguez. I am the sole surviving heir and daughter of the late Ilara Dominguez, in whose name you have titled tonight's gala. It has come to my attention that your guest of honor, Mrs. Marla Sutton, is using this event, and my mother's name, as a platform. This is being done without the consent of myself or my mother's estate. It is a profound and calculated misappropriation of her legacy. Furthermore, I have been informed that Mrs. Sutton intends to use this public stage to make defamatory statements regarding my character. I am formally putting the board on notice. You are providing the platform for this slander. Any false or defamatory statements made tonight will be met with immediate and swift legal action against both the speaker and the organization that knowingly provides the stage. I am attending tonight as a witness. I reserve all rights to protect my mother's legacy and my own reputation. I hit send. Second, my witnesses. I sent a text to Pastor Michael. Pastor, I am on my way back. I will be at the gala. Marla is using my mother's name. I have sent the board a legal warning. I need you to be there. I need you to listen. You are a witness to the truth. His reply was one word. I will. A similar text to Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson, the woman you are honoring tonight is a fraud. She is using my mother's name to cover for the fact that she is being investigated by her own board. I am attending. I ask only that you watch. His reply, I will be at the head table. This will be handled. Third, the weapon. I sat in the dark of the train car. The click-clack of the wheels was the soundtrack to my preparation. I opened my phone's video gallery. I found the file. Evidence, Exhibit A. I put in my headphones. I watched it. The grainy image of my own porch, my own tired face in my scrubs, Marla's face, contorted in a mask of pure rage, her hand flying up, the sharp, ugly crack as it connected with my cheek, my head snapping back. And her voice, clear as a bell, venomous and cold. Into the kitchen, or get out, or you will never see us again. Do you understand me? I watched it 3 times. The old Maria would have wept with shame. The new Maria felt a cold, hard resolve settle in her bones. She had lied to the hospital, claiming I had been violent. This video was the truth. It was the antidote. I looked up my legal rights in Ohio. One-party consent. The camera was on my property. I was a party to the conversation. And she was now accusing me of a crime. This video was not an attack. It was my self-defense. Fourth, the trap. I knew Marla. She would not back down. She would take that stage, wrap herself in my mother's memory, and paint me as a liar. I could not just stand up and shout. I had to be smarter. My phone rang. It was Mr. Henderson. Maria, he said, his voice a low growl. I just got off the phone with the board chair. He is concerned. My company's sponsorship is contingent on a gala that is not fraudulent. I have told him as much. They are in damage control. She will lie, I said. She will use that stage to lie. Yes, he said. She is insistent on giving her speech. The board is too cowardly to uninvite her, but they have compromised. They have told her that, as part of the tribute, they will be preceding her speech with a short nostalgic film about her contributions to the tradition. I saw the opening. It was small, but it was perfect. A film they are preparing? They are compiling it now, he said. They are terrified of a lawsuit. From me, from you. Mr. Henderson, I said, I have a video file. It is less than 1 minute long. It is not nostalgic. but it is the absolute truth of Marla's tradition and her feelings about family. I think the board should see it, as a potential preview." There was a long pause. "Send it to me," he said. I sent the file. He replied 2 minutes later. "My God, this is not a family dispute. This is a police matter. I am forwarding this to the board chair now, with my recommendation that it be integrated into their presentation. I believe this will solve the problem." The trap was set. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting themselves. The board would sacrifice their guest of honor to save their sponsorship. One last precaution. I texted my friend at the Cedar Heights Gazette. "I am heading to the Community Fund Gala. There is a high probability Marla Sutton will attempt to defame me during her speech. If she does, I will text you the word, go. I have a folder of evidence, the financial spreadsheet, the CPS threat, the heart attack lie. Ready for you. It will be the biggest story of the year." His reply, "Holy hell, watching my phone. Good luck." The train pulled into the station at 7:37 p.m. I took a cab. Not home, not to my father's house. I went straight to the Cedar Heights Grand Ballroom. I walked into the women's lounge. I was still in my travel clothes. I opened my small overnight bag. I pulled out the moss green cashmere sweater, my armor. I pulled it on over a simple black top. I walked out of the lounge and toward the ballroom doors. I was not a victim. I was not a runaway. I was a guest, and I had an invitation. The ballroom was packed. Hundreds of people, the elite of Cedar Heights, in tuxedos and gowns. The room was bathed in a soft, forgiving light. At the front, on the stage, was a massive banner. A chair for her. Beside it, a large, beautiful, professionally framed photo of my mother, Ilara. The sight of it made me sick. Marla was at the head table, radiant in a sequined red dress, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, already playing the part of the grieving, noble hostess. My father was beside her, a gray, haunted ghost. Kara was not there. I did not go to the head table. I found my own, in the back. Mr. Henderson was at the table next to mine. He saw me. He nodded. Once, grave. Pastor Michael was sitting at a table with other community leaders. He caught my eye. He nodded. A young waiter, a kid from the local college, came over to my table to pour water. He was nervous, his hands shaking slightly. He stopped, his gaze fixed on my face. "Excuse me, ma'am," he whispered, leaning in so close I could smell the starch on his uniform. I know this is weird, but are you Ms. Dominguez? Maria?" I froze. "Yes." His eyes were wide, full of a strange, horrified pity. "Oh my God," he whispered. "The AV guys, they were testing the video, the one for the speech. We all saw it, the thing she did, on your porch." My heart stopped. "You saw it?" "Everyone on staff has seen it," he whispered, looking over his shoulder at the head table. "They've been playing it in the tech booth. Ma'am, I am so sorry." The trap was larger than I knew. It wasn't just the board. It wasn't just the sponsors. The staff knew. The technicians knew. The news had not just leaked. It was a flood. I looked at Marla. She was laughing, holding her wine glass up in a toast. She was the only person in the room who didn't know. She was the star of a show that had been rewritten, and she was the only one who hadn't read the new script. "Thank you," I said to the waiter, my voice steady. "Could I just have a glass of water, please?" The ballroom lights dimmed, and a single, warm spotlight found Marla Sutton. She rose from the head table, a vision in sequined red, dabbing a handkerchief at her eye. She glided to the podium, her every movement a performance of practiced grief and nobility. The massive banner bearing my mother's name, Ilara, hung behind her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling just enough to carry through the microphone. The room was silent. "Thank you. Tonight, we honor a sacred tradition, a tradition of family, of love." She placed her hand over her heart. The empty chair. She looked out, her gaze sweeping over the 300 most influential people in Cedar Heights. "We keep it not in sadness," she continued, "but in love. We keep it to remember that family is the only thing that matters, that love is a bond that not even death can break. It is a symbol of—" Her voice trailed off. The spotlight on her face had snapped off. The entire ballroom was plunged into darkness. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. As I was saying," Marla tried again, her voice suddenly small in the dark. Then the massive screen behind her, the one that was supposed to be showing a picture of my mother, flickered to life. It was not my mother's face. It was the grainy, time-stamped footage from my doorbell camera. The audio, amplified by the gala's expensive sound system, filled every corner of the room. They saw me, Maria, in my blue scrubs, my face etched with exhaustion. They saw Marla, her face contorted in a mask of rage I had never seen her wear in public. They heard her voice, not the soft, trembling whisper from the podium, but a low, venomous snarl. "You will not walk away from me." They saw her hand slam my own door open, and then they saw the slap, the sound of it. The sharp, ugly crack of her hand hitting my face was obscene. It echoed, a visceral shock that made people gasp. They saw my head snap to the side. They saw me stunned into silence. And they heard her final, brutal sentence. "Now you listen to me. You will be at that house tomorrow, and you will be in the kitchen, or you will get out. Do you understand me?" The video ended. The screen went black. The house lights came up. Not soft, but harsh, bright, and unforgiving. The silence that followed was not silence. It was a vacuum. The sound of 300 people simultaneously realizing the truth. A single dessert fork clattered to a plate, and it sounded like a building collapsing. Marla was frozen at the podium, a gargoyle of surprise, her mouth open. A chair scraped loudly on the wooden floor. Mr. Henderson, the primary corporate sponsor, stood up from the head table. He was a tall man, and he looked furious. He did not look at Marla. He looked at the board chair. "Mr. Thompson." "Mr. Thompson?" Henderson's voice boomed. No microphone needed. "My company and my family will not be associated with a fabricated story, and we will certainly not be associated with this." He gestured to the blank screen. "We are pulling all funding from this organization, effective immediately." "He's right." The voice was a broken whisper from the head table. It was my father. He was half standing, one hand clutching the white linen, his face ashen. He looked past Marla, his eyes finding me in the back of the room, standing in my green sweater. "He's right," Dean said again, his voice cracking, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Maria, I'm so sorry. I was silent. God forgive me. I was silent for too long." A figure was moving from the back of the ballroom, near the exit. It was Kara. I hadn't seen her arrive. She must have been standing in the hall, watching. She walked past the head table, past her sobbing father, past her frozen mother. She stopped in front of Evan Bradley, who was standing near the door with his arms crossed. In front of everyone, Kara slowly, deliberately, pulled the large diamond engagement ring from her finger. "I'm getting therapy," she said, her voice shaking, but clear enough for him to hear. "I'm starting tomorrow. Then we can talk." She didn't throw the ring. She didn't give it to him. She slipped it into her own pocket. A choice. "No!" Marla finally found her voice. It was not a whisper. It was a shriek. It ripped through the room. "No, it's a lie. She made that. It's fabricated. She hit me. I told you, she's unstable. She's a liar. She's always been a liar." The gala's master of ceremonies, the same man Marla had called earlier, stepped quickly to the podium. His face was grim. "Mrs. Sutton," he said, his voice amplified, cutting through her hysteria. "You made that same accusation to the staff at Lakeview Mercy Center." He looked to the side of the room. "Marcus? Is Marcus from Lakeview Security with us tonight?" Marcus, in his security uniform, stepped forward into the aisle. Marcus, can you please confirm your report from your interaction with Mrs. Sutton? Marcus took the proffered microphone. My report states Mrs. Sutton was creating a disturbance at the nurses' station, claiming Ms. Dominguez was unstable. Ms. Dominguez was professional. Mrs. Sutton was the one making threats. She was escorted from the premises for disruptive behavior. And, the MC continued, turning to another table, Pastor Michael, I believe you also received communication from Ms. Dominguez? Pastor Michael stood up. He was holding the email I had sent. I received this document, the pastor said, his voice full of a quiet, unshakable authority. It is a list of non-negotiable terms for reconciliation. It requests mandatory family therapy. It requests a complete financial separation. And it demands respect for her daughter. It is not the letter of an unstable woman. It is the letter of a woman who has been pushed far past her limits. Marla just stared, her face ugly with disbelief, cornered from every side. The entire room turned, as one, to look at me, the woman in the back of the room who had said nothing. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need the microphone. I just spoke into the silence. This was never about a chair, I said, my voice clear and steady. It was about control. No one should have to sit in an empty chair, just so someone else can feel taller. The board chair, Mr. Thompson, finally stumbled to the stage. He looked pale, his hands shaking. In light of this truly shocking new information, the Community Fund is hereby immediately suspending Mrs. Marla Sutton from all board activities, pending a full investigation into event protocols and all volunteer contributions. Suspension, investigation, public humiliation, my father's confession, Kara's choice, Henderson's rejection. It was over. A slow, scattered, and confused applause started. I don't know who it was for. For Mr. Henderson? For the pastor? For the final, brutal truth? I didn't wait to find out. I turned, in my green cashmere armor, and I walked out of the ballroom. I didn't look back. My victory wasn't in watching her empire crumble. My victory was in the fact that I no longer needed to watch at all. I took the last train back to New York, the dark landscape of Ohio flying past the window. I arrived at the Astor Grand just before dawn. I let myself into the dark, quiet room. Dr. Rao and his family had brought Piper back hours ago. She was fast asleep in the massive bed, her breathing soft and even, the small silver paper bell still clutched in her hand. On the desk, under the soft glow of the lamp, was a piece of hotel stationery. It was a drawing from Piper. It was a long, beautiful passenger train, with her face and my face smiling from the windows. At the top, in her careful, precise 8-year-old handwriting, she had written 2 words, the homeward line. I sat on the edge of the bed, my coat still on. I was exhausted, but I was hollowed out in a new way. I was empty but not broken. I was free. Piper stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Mommy?" she whispered, her voice thick with sleep. "Did you finish your meeting?" "Yes, baby," I whispered back, my voice catching. "I finished. The meeting is all done." She reached out, her small arms wrapping around my neck, pulling me down. I hugged her, breathing in the simple, clean scent of her hair. I held on to her, my daughter in my arms, her drawing in my hand. As I held her, the little paper bell in her fist tinkled softly, the quietest, most beautiful sound in the world. The next morning, I sat at the desk while Piper watched cartoons. I opened my blog. I looked at the posts I had written. Then I added a new one, the last one. I spent 4 years trying to earn a seat at a table that was never meant for me. I will not make that mistake again. I didn't reclaim the chair. I built a different table. We went back to Cedar Heights 2 days later. The town was buzzing. Marla had reportedly left the state, staying with a sister. The house was quiet. Under my apartment door, there was a single, handwritten envelope. It was from my father. It was not an apology. It was not an excuse. It was a list of actions. Maria, it read, I have booked my first appointment with a therapist. I am respecting your terms. I have deposited the first of 12 payments into a trust account for Piper. The beginning of repaying the $11,480. Kara has started a support group. She and Evan are in counseling. The house is going up for sale. I read the letter. I felt a quiet, not forgiveness, not anger, just a stillness. I walked to my desk, to the folder labeled The Manipulation Genealogy. I placed my father's letter inside it. Just one more document in a long history. I closed the folder. I would answer him when I was ready. Maybe in a month, maybe in a year, maybe never. My timeline was my own. The story ends, but it also begins. It begins with me and Piper. A week later, we were on another train. Just a small weekend trip to see the snow melt. I watched the winter sun reflecting off the crust of ice. Piper was beside me, her head bent over her drawing pad, the silver bell tied to the zipper of her backpack. The train was quiet. My phone was silent. And for the first time in my entire adult life, I felt the unmistakable, solid, and profound feeling of peace. It was the last and the only revenge that ever mattered. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you are listening from. So please comment below and let's connect and share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.